Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum, Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Budaya, Salam Kebajikan, and Salam Sejahtera. It's a great honor for me to welcome each and every one of you to the second day of the second international seminar performance on Wayang, translating and transforming Wayang changes and development. Ladies and gentlemen, over the next 2 hours, this webinar will provide you the opportunities to discuss and share knowledge and insights, and we will learn a lot today. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Deanada Saragi, and I am a student of Vocational College English Study Program, Universitas Gadjah Mada. It's a wonderful and precious chance for me to be your master of ceremony in this very special morning. Before we proceed the program today, it's a great honor to welcome the Dean of Vocational College Universitas Gadjah Mada, Dr. Agus Mariono, the Vice Dean for Academic and Student Affairs, Mr. Agus Nugroho, the Vice Dean for Finance, Assets, and Human Resources, Ms. Nuriati, the Vice Dean for Research, Community Service, Alumni, and International Relations, Dr. Sylvie Nur Oktalina, the Vice Dean for Cooperation and Strategic Plans, Mr. Radian Krishna Putra, and all of the Vocational College Universitas Gadjah Mada officials. Dr. Endang Sulistiowati as the head of Department of Language, Arts, and Cultural Management. Ms. Yohana Ika Harnita Sari as the head of Diploma 3 English Study Program, Universitas Gadjah Mada. All lecturers of Vocational College Department of Language, Art, and Cultural Management, Universitas Gadjah Mada. Mrs. Irene Ritchie as President of the Melbourne Community Gamelan, Australia. Professor Mayco Santaella, Head of Department of Film and Performing Arts, Sunway University, Malaysia. Dr. Dewi Cahya Ambarwati, the lecturer Vocational College, Universitas Gadjah Mada, who stands as the chair of this seminar 2019 and 2020. Dr. Miguel Escobar from the National University of Singapore. All the representatives and participants of Minomartani Cultural Center. Dr. Kitsi Emerson from Jakarta Intercultural School. Mr. Widodo Hasjario as Head of National Press Monument. Mr. Andi Wisnu from the Minomartani Cultural Center. Dr. Eddy Pursubaryanto, Advisor to Balai Budaya Minomartani. Before we continue to the next agenda, we will share the 2019 Mawayang highlight video.
kalau dimakan zaman.
Bukan hanya di sini kau wayang menggema, juga di belahan bumi orang mengaguminya. Warisan berharga melebihi emas permata dari Indonesia, wayang untuk dunia.
Jang sangat cimicil. Kita jaga budaya wayang Indonesia. Wayangmu, wayangku, wayang kita semua. Senimu, seniku, budaya Indonesia. Jagalah selalu hingga di ujung masa. Tak perlu kau malu, dunia mengaguminya. Budaya bagai lembaran cerita, beragam budaya yang dimiliki Indonesia, yang harus kita lestarikan bersama. Mari untuk semua para kaum muda.
Jadilah generasi yang peduli akan budaya, karena budaya itu adalah sarana. Beda suku, bangsa, rasa, agama bersatu karenanya. Vote of Wayang, vote of Wayang. Kenali, cintai, lindungi budayamu sendiri, karena itulah cerminan dari jati diri. Bagalah akan budaya tradisimu ini. Yo, vote of Wayang, vote of Wayang. Yeah.
Budaya kita sebagai cermin dan kepribadian, karena harga diri sebuah bangsa itu bisa dilihat dari seni dan budayanya. Oke? Wayangmu, wayangku, wayang kita semua. Senimu, seniku, budaya Indonesia. Jagalah selalu hingga di ujung masa. Tak perlu kau malu, dunia mengaguminya. Wayangmu, wayangku, wayang kita semua. Senimu, seniku, budaya Indonesia. Jagalah selalu hingga di ujung masa. Tak perlu kau malu, dunia mengaguminya. Wayangmu, wayangku, wayang kita semua. Senimu, seniku, budaya Indonesia. Jagalah selalu hingga di ujung masa. Tak perlu kau malu, dunia mengaguminya. Budaya bagai lembaran cerita, beragam budaya yang dimiliki Indonesia, yang harus kita lestarikan bersama. Mari untuk semua para kaum muda.
Jadilah generasi yang peduli akan budaya, karena budaya itu adalah sarana. Beda suku, bangsa, rasa, agama bersatu karenanya. Vote of Wayang, vote of Wayang. Kenali, cintai, lindungi budayamu sendiri, karena itulah cerminan dari jati diri. Bagalah akan budaya tradisimu ini. Yo, vote of Wayang, vote of Wayang. Yeah.
Jadikan terus budaya kita sebagai cermin dan kepribadian, karena harga diri sebuah bangsa itu bisa dilihat dari seni dan budayanya. Oke? Wayangmu, wayangku, wayang kita semua. Senimu, seniku, budaya Indonesia. Jagalah selalu hingga di ujung masa. Tak perlu kau malu, dunia mengaguminya. Wayangmu, wayangku, wayang kita semua. Senimu, seniku, budaya Indonesia. Jagalah selalu hingga di ujung masa. Tak perlu kau malu, dunia mengaguminya.
Good morning and welcome Professor Mayco Santaella from Sunway Art University of Malaysia. And welcome to the second international seminar performance on Wayang Translating, Transforming Wayang Changes and Developments. This webinar is also broadcast live on YouTube on Seminar YouTube SV UGM channel. Thank you very much for joining this virtual seminar. And allow me to inform you that today's webinar will be translated into Bahasa in the chat box in the chat column by our translator, Ms. Mai Pavita, Miss Hanindia, Miss Anastasia Zahra, and Miss Dayanti, and they are also students of Vocational College English Study Program Universitas Gadjah Mada. On behalf of the translator, I shall request for an apology if there are mistakes in performing the translation. In conjunction with the 11th anniversary of Vocational College Universitas Gadjah Mada and the second Mawayang Festival to celebrate the World's Wayang Day, we cordially hold the second International Seminar on Wayang 2020 in partnership with Ministry of Communication and Informatics, Republic of Indonesia, and Balai Budaya Minomartani, and with media partner Tata Indonesia Daily News and Jago Kota. This event also has several aims. There are actively participate in preserving Wayang and developing Wayang performance, provide a virtual stage to elaborate Wayang from academic perspective, support traditional art performance during global pandemic, foster community engagement, to provide opportunities for the students to organize cultural virtual events as part of class practical assignment in MICE management course and Indonesian culture promotion course. To contribute as a cultural medium in character building and mental education for today's generation, provide an inspiring dialectical media between academic, partners, and the public for knowledge sharing and ideas exchanges about the dynamic of Wayang, and strengthen friendship, networks, and collaboration between UGM and local and international partners. Please allow me to read the House of Rules for today's webinar. The committee recorded the entire webinar session. Webinar participants are requested to turn off the microphone. Participants are requested to not interrupt the speakers while delivering the materials. Participants are allowed to ask questions when the moderator by writing in the chat box, Zoom, or YouTube live comment column. At the end of the session, participants will be given a link to fill out an evaluation survey to get an e-certificate. And I'll remind you again that the translator will use the chat box to do the translation. To begin this program, we are pleased to invite all of the attendees to sing the national anthem, Indonesia Raya. next agenda is the opening and welcoming speech from Dr. Endang Sulistiowati as the head of Department of Language, Art and Cultural Management Vocational College, Universitas Gajah Mada.
Okay, terima kasih. Thank you, Miss Dea. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to see you again today this morning, terutama kepada Bapak Miguel and also Ibu Irene. We have met last year. It's great to see you again today. To all participants of this webinar, welcome to the session, second Mawayang Festival. We all know that this is a very special year in that we are going to do it virtually. Last year, it was a very great moment that we have experienced the Wayang performance from our friends, Pak Anang, and also all the other friends performing very nicely in Sekolah Vokasi at that time in Holgepe. Dear all, ladies and gentlemen and participants, we know that this pandemic has changed in many aspects. We work at home, study at home, and it's not easy for all of us, but we have to adjust ourselves in these situations. Last year, it was in the 8th of November, if I'm not mistaken, we held the international seminar about Wayang, international seminar and lecture demo hosted by Department Bahasa, Seni and Management Budaya. At that time, we do it offline in that place. We would like to thank Balai Budaya Minomartani, Kementerian Komunikasi and Informasi. This time, we are going to host similar event, but virtually, and we would like to thank Dr. Pursubaryanto, Director of, I'm sorry, I need to see the screen. Director of Information and Communication of Human Development, also Dr. Hwang from Korea National University of Arts, Dr. Eddy. Eddy, how are you? Thank you for being here with us. Also, Dr. Muhammad Arif Rokhman, Professor Ronit Ritchie, Ibu Irene. We met several times.
England as well. Children can connect to these stories because they are about nature and about preserving, for example, the precious peatlands. Pak Eddy and I have also spent some time rewriting some classical stories. For instance, Oscar Wilde's The Happy Prince. We've retold that as The Prince Who Loved Animals. Also, the beautiful story of the Wisdom Tree has been retold by us in The Mango Tree. And as I said, they're oral tales of intimacy and honour. And the other aspect of the cultural stories is that they are there to make you laugh and also to make parents laugh, make the children laugh and have a good time. The very first book that I wrote was inspired by a man called Wayang Kendro. Now, Wayang Kendro was an Indonesian man who lived in Hawaii and America, and I happened to meet him on an internet list, an internet server list. And he used to share these wonderful stories that he remembered when he was a little boy sitting on his veranda in Yogyakarta from his grandparents. Some of the classical stories Kanchel who steals the cucumbers, Kanchel and the crocodiles, Kanchel and the magic gong. And the Kanchel and the cucumbers is the classic tale where the Kanchel steals the cucumbers and the farmer puts up the scarecrow with glue, and the Kanchel gets stuck on the glue, and the farmer is going to take him home for dinner. Overnight, he's put into a cage, and the family dog comes along, and the dog says, "Kanchel, what are you doing here in this cage?" And Kanchel says, "Oh, I'm going to be marrying the farmer's daughter tomorrow. I'm marrying Suli, and the farmer's put me in this cage to get me ready." And the dog says, "Oh, no. I am the one who wants to marry Suli. Please let me marry her. Let me swap places with you." So the Kanchel, through his trickery, swaps over with the dog, and he gets away. And that's usually the story of the Kanchel. Like in the crocodile story, he hops over the crocodiles to escape from the tiger. He has outwitted the crocodiles by saying that the Prophet Suleiman wants to give them gifts and they must be counted, but it's really a trip to get to the other side of the river. In the Kanchel and the magic gong, he explains that the gong will mean that the tiger will get all the animals to obey him, and the tiger is always wanting power, and so he takes the stick and hits the magic gong, and of course it's really a beehive, and they sting the tiger and he runs away, and the Kanchel is safe again. When I'd written this book of tales from Ayang Kendro, I then met Pak Eddy Pursubaryanto. I studied at Gajah Mada in the year 2000 and 2001, and Pak Eddy was my lecturer. I have been coming back to Yogyakarta for the last 20 years because I find the culture so fascinating, the Budaya Indonesia, and Pak Eddy offered to work on these stories with me. He wanted to be involved in writing them. So we wrote 5 books together. Most of these stories are also acted out in shadow puppet shows. I told these stories to my students and they just loved them in Australia, and that's why I was so keen on writing them in books in English. Pak Eddy was in the English department of Gajah Mada University, and the university offered to publish our books together. I was so thrilled to meet Pak Eddy because he's a Javanese man and knows these stories. He's a dalang of Wayang Kanchel particularly. And why did I love these stories? Mainly because I think that the Kanchel is such a great trickster. He's a tiny animal that can outwit the big and powerful, and shows us that we don't need to be big and powerful to solve problems. He's a peace lover. He believes in non-violence. He believes in democracy and in using your brain, not your fist. Other cultures also have these stories. In America, there's Brer Rabbit, and some of the Brer Rabbit stories are identical to the Kanchel stories. Aesop's fables are in Europe. But I love the stories of my near neighbour Indonesia, and therefore I wanted to work with Pak Eddy to write these stories. So we've written 5 books together: Kanchel the Clever Mouse Deer, Kanchel the Peacemaker, Kanchel's Secret Life, The Prince Who Loved Animals, and The Shiver on the River. In writing these stories, I've also found out that some of them are actually quite sophisticated literary compositions, and they are allegorical tales of power and authority, showing that an authority figure can manipulate the crowd through religious fraud, false security, and false hope. And we see that in the world today. With the artwork, as I said, Georgina Simmons did the first lot of first book, and then Margono Poco did these books. There have been some complications because sometimes it's hard to convey what I wanted to have in the stories. And in this story of Kanchel's Secret Life, which goes into the background of Kanchel, his parents are a frog and a sheep. But before he finds out all about his parents, he has to get rid of a fierce ogre from the forest. And the Kanchel is an orchid expert. And I wanted to use orchids because they're a very special flower and they're wonderful orchids in Indonesia. So I went to Ibu Irawati in Bogor, the Bogor Botanical Gardens, and I asked her to find an orchid for me that is pollinated by wasps. And she did. She found Cryptostylus javanica. So I used that. It was quite difficult to get the artist to draw the orchid because it was a very complicated flower. And the interesting thing about the orchid is that, like the kunchal, the orchid is a deceptor. When the male wasps go to the orchid, they smell the orchid and it smells very good, and they're in a mating mood, and they land on the orchid. They take away they think they're mating with the orchid, but they're actually taking the pollen and moving it to the next flower. So the kunchal and the orchid are both twins in tricksterism. Okay, so those are the books that we've written. Retelling and translation. It's not always easy. Eddy, as I said, was a lecturer at Gajah Mada and knew a lot of these stories. We were also inspired by Ledger Subrotto. Ledger Subrotto actually reignited interest in the kunchal in the 1980s. He was very sad that a lot of young people and children weren't interested in Wayang Kulit anymore, so he decided it was time to get children interested in the shadow puppetry, and so he reinvented the kunchal stories. He was given some books, and then he began to translate these stories from the old Javanese to modern Javanese. And Ledger also has the name for reinventing the kunchal stories. Up to that time, the kunchal was always seen as a trickster. I think the stories were even banned in Indonesian schools because he stole from the forest, but Ledger gave him a whole new image. His whole new image was that the kunchal is not a trickster. He is a victim of his environment. He's a victim of the environmental degradation, deforestation. There's no food in the forest anymore, climate change, all those factors. And he showed how the kunchal has to eat. So that's why he goes to the farmer and takes his cucumbers, but it's nothing to do with stealing. So Ledger was a great inspiration for us. How Eddy and I worked was that I would usually be spending some time in Jogja in January, and we would meet up, maybe have lunch together, and Eddy would tell me some stories. And this happened every year. So all our books have about 6 stories in them, and we would discuss them. He would tell me some of these stories. I would take notes, and I'd get the outline of each of the stories. And then I'd go back to Australia, and Eddy and I would communicate by email. So we communicated by email, and we went to and fro until I understood the story, and he was happy with the way I was retelling it. And I knew how to write these stories for an Australian and Western audience, but he wanted to keep all the Javanese structures as well. So we always had to check the meanings, and it was a very creative and productive process working together like that. My ideas in retelling these stories were to promote the Indonesian animals, because Indonesia has so many unique animals, and so many animals are threatened to eat any more fish. So he goes to the ogre, and he actually somehow tricks the ogre to get him tied up in a tree, and the ogre is left there. Now, there's divided opinion on this. Some stories have the ogre dying, but I was very keen not to have the ogre dying. I was keener to have him live and be sorry for what he did, and that's in fact what happened. Several days later, all the animals went back to the forest, and the ogre tied up in the tree was very sorry for himself, and he ran away and never to come back again. There's another example of that, and that is the treatment of the animals. There's a story called Kunchal and the Greedy Snake. The crows have had 2 babies, and they go off and look for food for their children. In the meantime, the snakes come out of their hole and gobble up the children. And the parents, of course, are absolutely distraught, and they go to look for Kunchal, and they find Kunchal. And Kunchal says, well, let's see what's happening in the forest today. I'm going to help you. So he looks around in the forest, and there's a prince in the forest who's just captured a clouded leopard to take back to the zoo. One of the things I also like to do when I tell these stories is to find out what's going on in Indonesia. And at that time, this clouded leopard had been discovered, a very new animal. So I wanted to include that in the story. So the prince is washing his hands in the river. He's taken off his gold jewellery, and the Kunshal says to the birds, why don't you go and grab that jewellery and put it at the hole of the snake? And so they do that, and the king's soldiers then see the jewellery at the hole of the snake, and the snakes come out and they're hissing like mad, and then the king's soldiers shoot them with an arrow. Now, some versions have the snakes dying, but again, I didn't want them to die. I wanted them to be taken back to the zoo, and that's what happened in the story. Another story is, another issue in translating is to avoid racism. And Eddy and I wrote a story about Kunshal and the tigers, and there's a white tiger that symbolises purity. Now, we were a bit concerned that this kind of was a racist approach, so we put a disclaimer at the bottom of the story where we said, in colour symbolism, white is seen as the colour of purity, cleanliness and innocence. The white tiger symbolises these qualities and has nothing to do with racism or of any description. I might just have a little sideline here, because another interesting experience that I had with translating was when I worked with Nunung Martin, and Nunung is watching today, so salam Nunung. Nunung has produced 6 videos of life in Yogyakarta, and one of them was about the nelayan, the fisherman, and we worked in a similar way to which I work with Pak Eddy. We did subtitles, we translated into English, we checked and looked at the worked through the video, and there was Paksum Kono. He was the fisherman, the lion, and he had a T-shirt on with a big sign that said racism. And in Indonesia, nobody probably would care about that, but in Australia, when I saw racism on his T-shirt, I thought, oh no, I'll never be able to sell this video in Australia. So Nunung had the great idea of putting a black strip across Paksum Kono, and so that you couldn't see racism, and the video went on to be a great success. In fact, I think Nunung got an award for it. So all those factors come into account when you're translating. Now, Wayang and the Kunshal. The Kunshal is a very important character in Wayang, and it's become more and more popular in Indonesia today. I was lucky enough to have Pak Eddy come to Melbourne in 2011 and perform a Wayang Kunshal. Indonesia is surrounded by different types of Wayang, and as I said, Wayang Kunshal re-emerged in the 1980s, and the stories were taken from the Kunshal folk tales. Pak Ledger was making the puppets in the 1980s. Pak Eddy did a master's thesis on Wayang Kunshal, and Pak Ledger also had an innovative puppet show in that he didn't use a screen. He created a scene of the jungle, he created trees, and he had all the animals performing without a screen, like the jungle. And Pak Ledger's aims in Wayang Kunshal were informasi, komunikasi, pendidikan, seni dan budaya and dakwah. So information about the environment. He was very conscious, and in fact, Pak Ledger even got an award from Sultan Hamengkubuwono X for his efforts at promoting the environment. Komunikasi, that children should learn that intelligence is so important, and to question and to ask. Pendidikan, good teachings, good values should come from the stories. All the stories have morals, and so that's really important. Seni and Budaya, of course, Pak Ledger was trying to get children's interest in the shadow puppet theatre, so he would often have a Wayang Kunshal, as Pak Eddy does too, a Wayang Kunshal for half an hour or 1 hour before the shadow puppet show, the Wayang Kulit. Dakwah, he also believed in the values of Islam should come out in these Kunshal stories. So a whole art form was created, a whole cultural form was created with Pak Eddy performing at Balai Budaya Minomartani. Pak Sukisno, who's my music teacher, I learned to play the gender from him. Pak Sukisno created special music for the Kunshal, and Pak Ledger, as I said, changed the image of the Kunshal from nakal to victim. And there's a traditional song about the Kunshal, and I have rewritten that song with a friend to make the Kunshal be a helper and a very studious and good character. Finally, I want to talk about cultural and education. Now, because I was a teacher, I was using these cultural stories in the classroom, and I created some teacher packs to let children know about the cultural. And I was also very grateful to Angara Wisnu, who has put a lot of these stories on YouTube.
Sorry, but Irene, you have 5 minutes more.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll show the video now. So there's a video made by Angara Wisnu, and it was made a couple of years ago, and it just summarises everything that I've said. So thank you.
All right. So I proceed to the video directly.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Irene Ritchie and I live in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, and I have been an Indonesian teacher and now I'm writing some stories. I was inspired when I was an Indonesian teacher to find children's stories in Indonesia, and I found these wonderful stories about the Kunchul, a little mouse deer, and I was lucky enough to see a shadow puppet show with the Kunchul, and then I found books about the Kunchul, and I started telling my students the stories and they absolutely loved them, so I had the idea of writing them, retelling the stories in English, and Eddy Pursubaryanto, my friend, he offered to work with me with these stories, and the English department of Gajah Mada University was willing to publish them. So that's how those stories have been written. This is the third book that Eddy Pursubaryanto and I have written together. It's been a very exciting collaboration because Eddy is a Javanese man who knows all the traditional stories, and it's been very exciting that he has presented these stories to me and I've been able to rewrite them. We've done 3 books and they've all been published by the English department of the Faculty of Cultural Science at Universitas Gajah Mada. The first book was a story of general cultural stories, the second one was Javanese stories, and this third one is one particular story, the story of Kunchul's birth, and it also brings in a few other stories, and it has even a story about the Kunchul using the beautiful flower, the orchid, to trick a giant who's driving the animals in the forest mad. And one of the reasons that I'm really interested in the Kunchul is because he's a trickster. He's a small animal who can outwit the big and powerful animals in the world. And I'm very much a believer in peace and wanting peaceful solutions to problems, and the Kunchul is exactly that kind of character. He doesn't use violence, he uses his brain, he uses his thoughts to solve problems and help all the animals in the forest. This book is different to the other books because it's one long story, but within the story there are a number of smaller sub-stories. It's basically about the Kunchul who's very sad. He realises he's never known who his parents are, and he asks all the animals in the forest about this. He finds out from the buffalo that the buffalo knows his secrets, and the buffalo tells him that he will only reveal all these secrets to him if he solves the problem in the forest, which is there's a mean and nasty ogre causing havoc, eating all the animals. And so the Kunchul has a brilliant idea of telling the ogre that there is an orchid that he's looking after for the king, and the ogre of course wants this orchid, but it really has a trick ending, which you can read if you read this book. The book is aimed at children from the age of 2 right up to the age of 18 really, and even adults can read it. I find that with a 2 or 3 year old you can tell them the story and act it out and have a lot of fun with it. When they get to 5 or 6 you can read it to them, the teacher can read it, older children can read it themselves, and those who are in their teens can enjoy these stories because they all have a moral ending. They're like a fable, and they're like a lot of other cultures have these books like Brer Rabbit in America and Aesop's fables in Europe. So Adults can also enjoy them because they encompass lots of moral ideas and lots of philosophical ideas. So there's always something to discuss in the cultural stories.
Thank you very much. And I'd just like to end with the words of Ayang Kendro, who died in 2007. He said, "Sayang kalau cerita ini hilang dari permukaan bumi." How sad it would be if these stories were lost to the world. So hopefully there will be many, many more cultural stories. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you very much for your presentation, Bu Irene. It's so interesting and it makes me throw back to my childhood when my father told me the story about kancil. You said that one of the classical stories about kancil and the cucumber, and it reminds me of his story. Yeah. All right. So for the participants, you can, if you have questions, you can type your questions through the chat box of the Zoom meeting or also comments in YouTube. But we have the other speaker for the first session. Yeah, thank you again, Bu Irene. Yeah, all right. The second speaker for this session is Associate Professor Dr. Mayco Santaella, the Head Department of Film and Performing Arts, Sunway University, Malaysia. Halo, Pak Mayco. Selamat pagi, Pak Mayco.
Selamat pagi.
Hello, Pak Mayco. Could you please make the volume louder? Turn up the volume of your microphone. Hello?
Halo, ya.
Yeah, okay. Hello, Pak Mayco. Actually, I'm curious about the pronunciation of your surname. Is that Santaella, 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 or Santaella? Actually, which one is the correct one to pronounce? Yang kedua.
Santaella.
Santaella. Okay, okay. Thank you very much. So I know the right pronunciation right now. Yeah. All right. So it's nice to see you again, Pak Mayco. Yeah. But before presenting, I would like to read your CV first. So Pak Mayco Santaella is Associate Professor and Head of the Film and Performing Arts Department at Sunway University, Malaysia. He studied at the University of Hawaii as an East-West Center Fellow and Foreign Language and Area Studies recipient. As a Fulbright recipient, he conducted research for his doctoral studies in the region of Central Sulawesi, Indonesia. His research focus includes the study of music and dance within the extended Sulu zone, choreomusicology, and popular music in maritime Southeast Asia. Today, Dr. Mayco wants to share about transnational identities, the Javanese Wayang Kulit heritage in Johor, Malaysia in the next 20 minutes. Yeah? Okay, Pak Mayco, are you ready? All right. Let's watch the video from, Pak Mayco.
ke Malaya pada waktu itu lebih kurang di awal tahun 1920. Wah, lama ya. Sampai sekarang Petro masih segar mugar. Alhamdulillah. Petro ini lebih kurangnya kalau sampai sekarang 67. Asal daripada Jawa Timur. Wayang kulit Purwo asal daripada tanah Jawa menggunakan bahasa Jawa. Wayang kulit ini sampai ke daerah Batu Pahat. Kalau dulu yang menggerakkan pun orang daripada sana, yang penontonnya pun ramai daripada sana, gunakan bahasa Jawa, gending lagunya pun Jawa, ramai yang paham, ramai yang tahu. Kan begitu ya? Kalau sekarang anak Malaysia, bapaknya sudah wabillahi taufik, penontonnya yang orang original Jawa sudah ramai yang gak ada, kita terpaksa gunakan bahasa Johor. Jadi wayang kulit Purwo berkonsep bukan Johor, tidak salah ya. Ayo pada malam ini sama-sama kita saksikan persembahan Petro dengan lakon kekuasaan yang dicari. Untuk itu saya maklumkan kepada para yogo iringan keluarnya negara Astina, gending atau lagu Timang Bulu.
The title of my presentation is Transnational Identities and the Javanese Wayang Kulit Heritage in Johor, Malaysia. The migration of Javanese communities to Johor and other sultanates in Malaya dates back to the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. The transmigrasi or transmigration experience during the Dutch colonial era resulted in a number of Javanese communities resettling on other islands as well as in Johor, Selangor, Perak, and eventually Kuala Lumpur. Performance traditions such as Ludruk, Wayang Kulit, Gamelan, Kuda Kepang, and Riok Ponorogo continue to signify Javanese identities in Malaya. The assimilation of Javanese as Malays was not a difficult one, given that they could speak Malay and were Muslim. Javanese Malays were eventually considered Malays in Malaya, and after independence received Bumiputra status, which gave them additional benefits. With a focus on the Wayang Kulit heritage among the Javanese in Johor, the structure of this presentation is threefold. First, it discusses transnational identities among the Javanese in Johor, considering border crossings, encounters with the other, and cultural regions beyond geographical conceptualizations with a focus on the production of locality and the tensions between cultural homogenization and cultural heterogenization. The second part of this presentation investigates transnational identities within the Javanese Wayang Kulit heritage in Johor, considering its performance by Malaysians of Javanese and non-Javanese descent. The third part of this presentation revisits Anglophone discourses and deliberates ethnic conceptualizations that challenge ethic views on transnational identities. This concluding section scrutinizes global arguments of the homogenization diversification dyad, considering alternative modernities and the in-betweens of the fluid conceptualization of comunitas in maritime Southeast Asia. In this first section, I will discuss the concept of transnational identities and the Javanese in Johor. This is a map of the region. A large amount of the Javanese communities in Malaysia came from East Java. The family of the dalang or puppeteer discussed in this presentation came from the Ponorogo district at the border with the province of Central Java. A large amount of the Javanese communities relocated to Johor, the southernmost state in peninsular Malaysia, which shares maritime borders with Singapore to the south and Indonesia, both to the west and the east. The dalang or puppeteer showcased in this presentation lives in the district of Batu Pahat, which faces the Straits of Malacca towards the south. The Javanese migrations in Johor took place between 1880 and 1930. In 1901, the Dutch instigated the Dutch ethical policy that was to last 4 decades to improve the living conditions of local people. The transmigrasi era took place during this time, where many Javanese moved to other less populated areas of the archipelago. The success of Sultan Ibrahim, known as one of the richest men in the world at the time, might have been one of the reasons for the relocation of Javanese families to Johor. Many have assimilated as Malays. They speak Malay and practice Islam, thus were able to receive Bumiputra status and were often considered Malays in Malaysia, rather than mixed Malay and Javanese. As stated by Miyazaki, quote, "The Javanese Malays have not been fully studied, probably because they have become relatively invisible, a condition engendered by the omnipresence of their Malay status," end quote. For the analysis of transnational identities, this presentation considers a Padurais discourse for the production of locality, which looks at the tensions between cultural homogenization and cultural heterogenization. The arrival of the Javanese in Johor led to cultural homogenization at the national level by virtue of being considered as Malay, particularly after Malaysian independence. Simultaneously, Javanese communities maintain a level of heterogenization through the practice of Javanese traditions at the local level. Peterse, in his analysis of homogenization and what he terms diversification within a global context, considers a territorial view of culture. This analysis places terms such as cultural imperialism, dependence, and hegemony as part of a homogenization process, and ideas of interdependence, syncretism, and hybridity as part of a diversification process. As such, the analysis of transnational identities among the Javanese in Johor challenge Anglophone dyadic conceptualizations given their capacity to go through both a process of homogenization and diversification simultaneously. For this reason, we need to consider some alternative conceptualizations of hybridity from the point of view of the cultural beholder. In this case, the idea of border crossings is not universal. The arrival of the Javanese in Johor took place during the times of colonial Malaya before independence. As such, the framework of the nation-state did not govern identity formations as it does nowadays. Secondly, the encounters with the other do not work the same as other cases of transnational identities. For the Javanese in Johor, the so-called other was also part of the extended Nusantara region and what is culturally considered as the Malay world. Lastly, while Peter's ideas provide a territorial view of culture, we need to consider community, ethnic, and cultural forms of transnationalism, considering the in-betweens of the fluid conceptualization of comunitas in maritime Southeast Asia. I will now move to the second section of this presentation that discusses the Wayang Kulit heritage in Johor. In this section, I will show an excerpt of the documentary that I have been working on that showcases the dalang or puppeteer Wat Miskon. Wat Miskon has been both a practitioner and advocate of Javanese performing arts for many decades through his cultural organization called Badan Kebudayaan dan Kesenian Setiabudi. I will now share some of the footage of the documentary with you and let Wat Miskon describe his heritage in Johor.
Gamelan ini boleh mengiringi wayang kulit, nyanyian, instrumental kosong saja, dan tarian.
mana tidak ada gender, tidak ada selentem, mini lah ini. Saya dulu sebenarnya tukang kebun sekolah. Pensiun bersara pada 5 hari bulan 10 1999. Maknanya ya sudah 18 tahun, 15 tahun ya. Saya memikirkan setelah saya bersara, apa saya nak buat? Kalau duduk rumah, keluar Pak Raja, beli surat khabar, cepat tua kan? Gitu. Jadi saya pun menggilap apa yang ada di dalam saya tentang seni sebenarnya sedikit. Dalam keturunan umat, saya orang kedua, bapak saya orang dari Jawa, tapi dalam generasi kebudayaan, saya meneruskan ini orang yang keempat. Saya minati tentang benda ini pada mulanya memang ikut-ikut di kampung dulu, kan awal-awal kampung ini sudah ada gamelan. Kalau ada orang kerja kawin, sudah barang itu malam ada persembahan wayang kulit.
Pagi sehat walafiat, nggak ada apa-apa.
Faktor keturunan juga boleh digunakan pakai. Bapak saya mencampuri saja, tapi minatnya tak ada. Tapi atuk saya. Lepas itu faktor keturunan ini boleh digunakan pakai. Atuk saya depan rumah ada pentas juga, ada grup gamelan juga. Itu ada kata orang ludruk ya, pernah dengar mungkin ludruk nih drama Jawa. Ludruk nih. Kalau ketoprak adalah bangsawan. Kalau kita di Malaysia. Atuk saya memang orang seni, jadi saya boleh dikatakan keturunan atuk lah. Gitu. Kampung ini lebih kurang 120 tahun lah, lebih kurang. Orang aktif dalam seni ini lebih kurang lama 25 tahun tuh aktif lah. Maka akan gustan, tukar lagi. Ya gitu kan. Dulu 3 kampung nih, Pare Ajali, Pare Dipah, Pare Bingan. Ini ada kampung-kampung itu kan ya. Pare Bingan ketoprak, Pare Nipah wayang wong, Pare Ajali ludruk. Di mana ada kekurangan tenaga dijemput. Sini jemput sini. Kalau di sini wayang wong dulu sebelumnya wayang kulit. Wah, pelakon-pelakonnya orang-orang yang mulu-mulu penerus ke kampung. Wah, gitu. Kalau dia ada watak Gatot Kaca, ada watak Arjuna, ya. 1920 macam itulah lebih kurang. Dari zaman mula-mula ya apa yang ada lah. Maknanya ya yuran sikit-sikit. Nanti ketua kampungnya pergi Jawa sana balik bawa. Pun tak banyak masa itu kan pengangkutan bukan macam sekarang. Boleh pos, boleh package ke apa. Di Malaysia gamelan ini banyak di pantai timur. Wayang, Terengganu. Kemudian gamelan yang di pantai timur pun selendro. Saya sudah ketok itu gamelan. Oke, lagu-lagu di sana dicipta dalam Pahang dan Terengganu. Timang burung, togok, itulah inang Cina, ya tak? Kita pun boleh buat. Tapi irama kita macam sampak songo, serpak, dia tak boleh buat. Kumpulan Pantai Timur susah nak buat. Mungkin tak dikenalkan nota atau pergi sana. Sebenarnya kalau ada nota boleh buat.
As explained by the Dalang Wat Miskon, there are marked differentiations between the gamelan traditions of Malaya and Java, as well as the Wayang Kulit ones for that matter. Let us then consider some points for the conceptualization of the Wayang Kulit heritage in Johor. The performance of Wayang Kulit is based on a tradition that was inherited within Johor. Unlike earlier generations that migrated from Java, Wat Miskon learned the tradition in Malaysia. Wat Miskon, now an elder of the community himself, is passing down what he terms as a Johorian conceptualization of the Wayang Kulit heritage. Wayang Kulit itself is also a form that adapts, narrates, and critiques social, political, and local issues, delivering messages to the audience and does not portray fixity. Unlike other traditions that are associated with a specific locale, such as court heritage, for example, Wayang Kulit is able to adapt to different contexts. Wayang Kulit is not only present across different ethnic groups, but also different nations. And performers, aware of this, often adapt to their own communities. In this case, Wayang Kulit as a form itself carries transnational qualities. Wayang Kulit maintains both a regional and a local character, simultaneously negotiating homogenization and heterogenization. Lastly, we need to consider how the nation-state may shape national identities that allows the performance of other traditions in new locales beyond their birthplace, as they become identity signifiers of the district, the state, and at times the nation.
Saya mempertahankan kebudayaan Jawa ini, bukan wayang kulit saja, sebab saya berpegang kepada konsep 4G, 4G. Kalau saya Jawa, keturunan Jawa, pertama soal keturunan K pertama, kedua soal keagamaan K kedua, K ketiga kewarganegaraan, dan K keempat kebudayaan. Jadi kalau saya mengaku secara otomatis saya ini keturunan Jawa, Jawa saya sampai mana? Sampai mana Jawa saya? Jawa kok ada kenduri pakai ambeng, Jawa kok ada reog, Jawa kok ada wayang kulit. Ini perlu saya dalami. Ini perlu saya dalami. Ya. Sebab kalau hanya mengaku saja, tapi segala-galanya kita tidak mau cari, apa artinya pengakuan kita? Di sebaliknya tentang kewarganegaraan, tentang keagamaan, tentang kebudayaan juga, kita mesti mau cari itu. Sebab saya meminati, bukan saja minat, mau mengekalkan apa nih kebudayaan yang keturunan mbak saya atau untuk saya ini.
To conclude this presentation, I'd like to present a few points to reconsider Anglophone discourses for transnational identities. First is Malaysian performances of a Javanese heritage. How do national boundaries shape the forms that have roots in other countries, for example? Transnational identities of the individual through Javanese values. For example, how do performers themselves construct new transnational identities considering values and custom of each locale? Traditions within supercultures and subcultures. Wayang Kulit is performed by the largest and dominant ethnic group in Indonesia and becomes part of the subculture in Malaysia. How do subcultures adapt to new supercultures as humans adapt to larger dominant ethnic groups? To reconsider hybridity from the point of view of the cultural beholder. Transnational identities often cover the discussion of new hybrid forms in their new contexts of production. We need to reconsider this term, particularly for new generations that associate themselves with the new local rather than the motherland of their ancestors. Memories of a Javanese past in Johor rather than a Javanese land in Indonesia. Hence, we need to consider that the longing might be for earlier experiences of the same locale. Wayang Kulit as a form is inherently transnational, as opposed to, for example, some Kraton Palace genres and performances associated with a specific locale. We need to consider geographical identity vis-a-vis community, ethnic, and cultural ones, as noted earlier. In this case, it is important for the analysis of different locations that share similar cultural contexts and heritage. To understand that the concept of transnationalism itself departs from Anglophone discourses of what is considered national and what the prefix trans means. Lastly, while transnational oftentimes places the individual under dyadic binaries of locale, we need to consider cultural in-betweens and the fluid conceptualization of identity in Southeast Asia.
Wow, thank you very much for your presentation, Mayco. Yeah, it's very enlightening, yeah, knowing that Wayang Kulit has already become transnational identity. Yeah. All right. So we proceed to the Q&A sessions. We have 15 minutes of the Q&A session. So I will invite all the participants here to ask questions to Bu Irene and also Pak Mayco Santaella. Yeah. You can, oh yeah, we have questions from Pak Eddy here. Pak Eddy, hello. Do you want to ask directly to Mas Mayco? Oh yeah, okay. So I will read the questions from Pak Eddy. Yeah, Mas Mayco, how many dalang wayang kulit in Johor now? How about regeneration of kebudayaan? Wait. How about regeneration of dalang, and how often are performances in Johor or other areas? So maybe the first questions to Mas Mayco Santa Izra. So would you like to answer the question?
Oke, terima kasih atas pertanyaannya. Yeah, so right now I would say there's probably there's a number of wayang kulit and gamelan groups in Johor, but probably the active ones are maybe 3 of them, and Wat Miskon is probably one of the most active ones. Unfortunately, there's not regeneration is an issue, I would say. While some students are beginning to learn gamelan, many of them don't really study pedalangan, yeah, the puppetry tradition. So I think that is where the issue is. So in many occasions, actually, they use gamelan to accompany wayang wong, and usually in Johor, the government would ask them to go and perform wayang wong, but rarely they ask them to perform wayang kulit, because wayang kulit is only for the Javanese communities themselves, not for others usually. So yeah, regeneration right now for wayang kulit is actually an issue. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for your answers, Mas Mayco. Pak Eddy, are you satisfied with the answers? Okay, yeah. Thank you. And now I'll move to the second question from Inyoman Sedana. Yeah. Thank you, Pak Mayco. Yeah. Pak Inyoman Sedana, do you want to directly ask to Pak Mayco?
Yes, thank you, please.
Oh yeah, okay, please.
Thank you for your great presentation. When I was here last time, I had a chance to visit Johor sometimes, quite often actually, because very close from Singapore. But at the time, I learned that the government in Malaysia banned wayang because some philosophy of wayang is considered detrimental, as negative against the doctrine of Muslim over there. So it's not considered good for the development of Muslim community over there. So is that situation still, and the government not support the wayang over there in Malaysia? So can you tell me about government and the wayang over there in Malaysia? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Sedana, for the question. So I think basically we have to make a distinction, yeah, between the wayang kulit of the Javanese in Johor and then the wayang kulit of the Malay in Kelantan. So the state of Kelantan is actually following Sharia law, so it's under Muslim law, so it's much more constrained in terms of the policies and the restrictions that they have for a number of performances, not just for wayang kulit, but also for Mayong and Maintri, all the different genres. So recently there's been the ban has been lifted. So the situation is a little bit better in Kelantan, yeah. But in Johor, I would say that because they perform mostly the wayang purwo, yeah, they perform mostly for the community themselves, so they can continue with this practice, yeah.
Can you expect some donation or what is that called, subsidy from the government now, because the government does not ban the wayang anymore over there in Malaysia? Because if you're here in Bali, you can do anything you want, no matter what's your religion, like that. So how about the government? Is the government very generous or very cheapskate to the wayang kulit over there?
Yeah, thank you. So I would say there is some support for the different genres, but in Kelantan, so that is one of the issues I think for Johor, because of course the government is usually mostly Malay, yeah. So within Johor, there's usually support for Wayang Wong, for example, among Javanese community, because I think it's maybe more appealing. It has acting, it has dance, but because the Wayang Kulit Purwa is mostly for Javanese, then they don't get much support for that. So that is now the issue. Yeah.
Are you able to tell us some way or strategy how to come group students from Denpasar, Bali, Denpasar in order to make a collaborations or cooperation together with them in Malaysia, because somewhat close over there from Bali or from Sumatra to Malaysia. So what the way you can share for us?
Okay, that's your final questions, yeah, Pak Sedana, because we still have more questions to go. All right, so yeah, okay. Thank you, Pak Mayco. Please answer the last question from.
Okay. Yeah, you can share my email address. That's okay, and then you can contact if you want to work something out. Right now we're in lockdown, so we cannot travel. But when the border open up, we can try to work something out.
Yeah, of course, hopefully.
Okay, okay.
I think, Mbak Andri, your microphone is...
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, all right. So, yeah, we move to another questions, yeah, Pak Mayco. Still for Pak Mayco, I think. From Khairul Imamil of Universitas Gadjah Mada, I'm so surprised when I heard that Wayang Kulit is Johor heritage. When we are talking about heritage, we can't separate it from a long process of its forming. Could you explain it more, please? Yeah.
Okay. So I think, okay, so the concept is not to think in terms of fixity, but the idea is that we have to consider how the new generation is I think the older generation, like Wak Miskon and his parents and grandfather, they still have a strong link to Jawa. But nowadays, the new generation don't necessarily go back to Java anymore. They become more Malaysian. So they have they identify with this tradition as being a Johor, like the Dalang mentioned, a Johorian concept of Wayang Kulit. Yeah, so it has some changes. So if you heard, for example, the tradition begins, you have Srapagan Sampa to begin the Wayang Kulit performance, but then they play the piece called Timang Burung. And Timang Burung is a piece actually from the Gamelan in Malaysia. So there's been a process of hybridity that is taking place where a lot of pieces are adapted into the Wayang Kulit repertoire of Johor to make it more Johorian. So.
All right. So thank you very much for the answer, Pak Mayco. Okay, we have a question to both speakers from Pak Winanto. This is one of lecturers in the English program, Vocational College UGM. How enthusiastic are the audience of Wayang in both Malaysia and in Australia? So maybe Bu Irene, yeah, you can to answer this question. Thank you.
Well, I've been involved in quite a few Wayang Kulit, Wayang Cultural in Melbourne, and we get a fantastic audience. People are very enthusiastic. They like the fact that it's usually about 3 hours. I'm not sure if they could stay for longer. And can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've had Pak Eddy came out twice in 2011 and 2012, and we had big audiences. We had three Wayang a day, and it was very, very popular among children in the daytime and adults at night. And whenever we've had a Wayang Kulit in Melbourne, we've had very good audiences. So people are very enthusiastic to come, and we want to do more.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you very much, Bu Irene. And what about in Malaysia, Pak Mayco?
Yeah, so there is, I think, some reception at the local level. So in Johor and in Kelantan, I think at the national level, it needs development. So some people, for example, from Kelantan have been collaborating and creating new performances based on new stories, like maybe you know the film Star Wars, right?
Oh yeah.
So they made a Wayang kulit based on Star Wars. So,
Okay, Luke Skywalker, yeah.
but the interesting thing is that they adapt also. They keep the traditional songs, but they adapt some of the songs from Star Wars into the traditional instruments. So it becomes interesting for them.
Oh yeah. Okay. Suddenly your microphone is mute. Yeah. Wow, that's great. Yeah, to hear that collaboration. Yeah, or its modification. Okay. Thank you, Pak Mayco. And then we still have question for Bu Irene. This is from YouTube from Bu Nunung Matin. What kind of next episode of new creation of Wayang Kancil? Yeah. And then also from Andre Ayesha, whether the book you wrote will have language adjustments for kids. Okay. So please, yeah.
Right. Hello, Nunung. I have actually written a couple of news stories about the Kancil. So if there's any publisher out there who would like to publish them, it would be fantastic. I said at the start that I love to promote Indonesian animals, and there's never been a story about the Kancil and Komodo dragon. So I've written a story about the Kancil, the dragon, and the drone. So that's a news story. And I've also written an interesting story. Of course, it's interesting. An Indonesian mouse deer goes to America, and he meets all the other deer in America and a grizzly bear. And it's a great story about the Kancil going to America. So these are new creations, and it would be wonderful to write some more of the stories because there are so many, many stories. I'd love to rewrite more. And as I said, I've also written 2 news stories. With the language adjustments, I'm not quite sure what that means. I rewrite the stories in English, and children can understand them because, I know what the children understand and what they like, and how to write for children. So there doesn't have to be much adjustment. I tend to use words and some Indonesian words and hard words in the story so that children are challenged. So I don't think there's much language adjustment, and if there is, it's deliberate so that they might understand some Indonesian words.
Wow, yeah. Okay, so Mas Andre, are you satisfied with the answers? Yes. All right. Thank you. Okay, there is another question, Bu Irene. What is your favorite story? Do you mean that Kancil from all the Kancil stories, Miss Shandy? Yeah.
Yep.
What is your favorite story? Yeah. Okay.
It's called The Prince Who Loved Animals. I didn't get much chance to talk about it, but it's about Prince Hastipaka, who's very angry with his father, who's killing the elephants and the rhinoceros and the tiger for their body parts. And Prince Hastipaka goes into the forest and meets all the animals. He meditates, and he's like the true Javanese Ratu Adil. He comes back to be king, and he will have all sorts of policies to save the animals. It's my favorite story.
Wow, so it's like hero, yeah, the heroic story, yeah. All right. Oh, okay. So we have actually one more question. Okay. Bu Irene, what is your favorite character? Do you mean like the animals, or oh yeah, from all the books maybe, yeah?
Yeah, I guess I love the tiger because he's always after the Kancil, and he's always gullible. He always gets tricked. And apart from the Kancil being my favourite story, I do like the tiger because he can never catch the Kancil, and I think that's great.
Wow, tiger, yeah. Okay, wow. Okay,
we've got some in our zoo, and they're beautiful animals.
Yeah, so tiger is your favorite. My favorite one is who is that? Yeah, the bird maybe. Yeah.
Ah, which bird?
What kind of bird? Umprit? What is umprit? I don't know what is umprit. Yeah, it's it's bird who which it's paddy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But now we have several characters, like maybe as what Mayco said, that we have characters from Star Wars, and then last week we have character Doraemon, and then also SpongeBob, something like that. So anything can be made as wayang actually right now. Yeah, Bu Irene, thank you very much, and please give applause to both speakers of the first presentation.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I have background noise here. We have we call that penonton bayaran here, yeah. Here to make the atmosphere livelier. Okay, thank you very much for Bu Irene and then also Pak Mayco for your great presentations. I'm sure that the participants of the sessions will get knowledge and also understanding about the topics that you already delivered. Again, thank you very much. Okay, right. And then we move to the second panel session. And then for the second panel session, we have two more speakers. The first one with Dr. Dewi Cahya Ambarwati from Vocational College Universitas Gadjah Mada. And then the second one is Dr. Miguel Escobar from National University of Singapore. Yeah, the first presentation will be delivered by Dr. Dewi, but before that, I will read her short biodata. Dr. Dewi serves as a lecturer at the Applied English Program, Department of Languages, Arts and Culture Management of Vocational College Universitas Gadjah Mada. Her educational backgrounds about international relations of Universitas Gadjah Mada for undergraduate programs, and then for her master program, religious and cross-cultural studies in Universitas Gadjah Mada, and she also completed her doctoral programs in interreligious studies in Universitas Gadjah Mada. So today she will present about Wayang Wong elements in Islamic Javanese dance community. All right, let's meet with Miss Dewi. Hello, Miss Dewi.
Hello.
Yeah.
Good morning, Mbak Andri. Thank you very much for introducing me.
Yeah. Good morning. How are you, Dewi?
Good, thank you.
All right. So are you ready for the presentation?
Yes, I'm going to share my screen, and before I proceed to my presentation, I would like to greet Bu Irene and Mas Mayco. How are you? Thank you so much. Yeah, and to all participants, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the seminar of performance Wayang, I would like to thank everyone for being with us. And I'd like to share my screen, yeah. Could you see my slide?
Okay, yeah. All right, so yeah, Miss Dewi will present about Wayang Wong dance elements in Islamic Javanese dance community. All right, I think Miss Dewi is ready.
Yes.
Okay, your time is 25 minutes.
Thank you. So here I would like to share a story and my experience when I was doing research on religion and dance back in 2017. So here I'm just going to share the stories. It was back in 2014, actually, a few years ago. I went to see a performance. Yeah, it was actually a sholawatan. Yeah, sholawatan, but I was really confused. What were they trying to express? I could not see their expressions. And what is it about? What was it about? Yeah. And that was when I encountered the Sholawatan Emperor back in 2014. And then when I saw it again in 2017, yeah, and then I met some things that are very specific and unique to me, because there are some movements that are inspired from the Wayang Wong, and literally Wayang means shadow, yeah. Wong means persons, people. So here there's no Wayang Kulit performance yet, but Wayang Wong, that the Wayang Kulit that is transformed into dancing, the people who dance. Okay, so I will start again with Sholawatan Emprak. There will be some long sentences here in my slides because I need to help the student who are translating the contents. So Sholawatan Emprak appears as a work of art with Islamic influence, so it has something to do with Islam. It showcases artistic qualities in the forms of literature, music, singing, vocal, and dance in Javanese langgam or langgam Jawa, that's what we call here. Melodious traditional music. And the one in Klenggotan. Klenggotan is the name of a village here in Yogyakarta, specifically in Bantul. Yeah. The dance presentation had been modified with Wayang Wong elements. And Sholawatan itself comes from the term Sholawat that associates with the practices of prayer recitation in the glorification of God, the Muslims' God, yeah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and praises the Prophet Muhammad. The contents of the narratives include the stories of the Prophet's birth and the struggling events to stand for Islam. And in the development as in contemporary Muslim society, the Sholawat practice transforms into Sholawatan, in which more aesthetic attributes are incorporated. When I encountered with the members of the dance community in the Pondok Pesantren Kali Opak, because next to the community there's a very big river named Kali Opak there. And one of the members, he already passed away back in 2018. Yeah. And I met one of the elders named Eddy. He was 77 years old when I met him. So now probably around 80. The Sholawatan Emprak, before many years ago, before 1945, yeah, Eddy witnessed that before 1945, the Sholawatan Emprak already existed. And the dance presentations was the people were sitting on the floor and just move their torso like this. And that went for several hours, yeah, from 9 or after Isha, from after the evening prayer until next morning. It's like Wayang Kulit, yeah. And then Mbah Mitra Harjono joined the community, yeah. Joined the community, and then he developed the movements, yeah, and he incorporated the Wayang Wong movements. Okay, here the dancers put their body in cross-legged sitting positions or laye. But during Srokal part, that is the last part of the Emprak dance, they stood and did rotate movement. Yeah. For this Emprak, the dance moves were added with the Wayang Wong dance moves, no longer sitting or laye and more into sophisticated moves. Okay, but you're not going to find this in the Sholawatan Emprak. So this is the Wayang Wong characters. On my left, yeah, or in your left, the characters from Ramayana, from Rama, Sinta, Trijata, and Laksmana, and to the right is me doing the in green is Rikandi. No characters found in Solawatan Amprak, because the nature of the dance presentation is more into Islamic dance presentations. Either this? No, there's no such presentation of this Wayang Wong in the Solawatan Amprak. But however, what makes this? What are the Wayang Wong elements found in the Solawatan Amprak? Yeah. That's that I'm going to elaborate more. The word amprak itself then became a verb from a noun, indicating the internalization, stylizations, and appropriateness of outside elements into the amprak field. What does it mean? Yeah. The amprak, there are some opinions about the word amprak. Yeah. And Kiai Haji Jadul Maula from the Pondok Pesantren Kali Opa, he was doing an investigation, was doing a research himself about the origin of amprak. Yeah. Amprak from the word ngelemprak. In Japanese, you lay down on the floor, and then in Sundanese, it means clap your hands, because in some of the movements, we clap hands, especially in the transitions between scenes. Yeah. And then the appropriateness of outside elements. The language does matter, like what we say. Shall we amprak this? Ayo diemprakke. It becomes the verb form from a noun. Yeah. And also the scenes, yeah, not found in Solawatan Amprak. Yeah, the very popular scenes in Wayang Wong. Yeah, but we can see here there are refined characters, there are strong characters, and these are that are taken into Solawatan Amprak dance movement. Yeah, the characterizations in the context of movements, but not. If we talk about the technical skills of dance, it's not like a very rigid, structured movements. Yeah, they only do this. So there are transformations as well, so in their understanding and in practicing the movements. Because the Solawatan Amprak carries out the religious purposes. Yeah. Some of the members, they are doing this the dance presentation as part of the how they worship gods and how they praise the prophets. Yeah. The religious purposes stand more than the technical skills of the dancing themselves. The soft movements are danced in certain songs, and then how they interpret the Wayang Wong characters, yeah, in the movements. There are brasa or strong characters in Youth Society song, yeah, and then lentreh for the refined character like the now. But here we cannot see which one is Duryodhana, which one is Arjuna, which one is Yudhishthira, because all members, all dancers, they will do the same thing, similar movements. How we can identify how the movements are indicated, yeah, to present the characters, if we know, yeah, the movement. For refined characters, most of the movements, the shoulder, yeah, all movements, yeah, the movements are done below the shoulder levels. This is for the refined characters. But if we do this for the movements above the shoulder level, like this one, this means this is for the strong characters. Like Daksuro, of course, characters. Daksuro here, This refers to the in the past, yeah, they say Londo. Londo, the Dutch, yeah, who occupies Indonesia, the horse characters. And then clown characters like Punakawan in Syekh Kita song. And then the clown characters we can see from this one. Usually Petro does this, yeah. And then for Bagong here. Yeah. So that's how we know. And then for the dancing positions, they're sitting on the floor. So when they enter the stage, yeah, so they do lumaksono, as in the Javanese dance. Yeah. So they do it with their knees on the floor and make some moves. Here, the combination of dance movements like in Islam and Java. Yeah. Why in Islam? Because they also do the they demonstrate a worship movement. So when the Muslims do salat, yeah, but not this one, yeah. When they do, when they get the homage, they do the sujud, yeah. So they bow. So they do this, and they incorporate the sujud move into the dancing. And then for Javanese lens, yeah, the fields that they are using the Wayang movements. However, what makes this interesting is that no female dance movement. So why? That was my big questions, because when I did practice with them and perform with them as part of the my research, yeah, it's the practice-based research, yeah. I asked them. They did not give a very to me precise answer. They only said everyone does the same thing. But then I asked about the history. Mbah Mitro, the one who passed away, he was he was the Wayang Wong dancer, but actually he did not involved in a specific Wayang Wong dance community. So there's a place here called Taman Siswa, yeah, and then he looked from afar the practices, and then he also learned the stories, and then he also learned the characters. So he could differentiate which one is refined and which one is strong character, and then he joined the Sulawatan Emperor, and he transmitted what he knew, what he saw, what he observed of the Wayang Wong practices and trainings, yeah, to this Sulawatan Emperor. So that's why they do not demonstrate the dance technical skills, yeah, because the interpretation, how they understand the moves and how they practice the moves, it's based on their own references, how they see the trainers give them the demonstrations of the movements. So if we do this meeting, technically speaking, they don't do this. They do this. So I will show you the video, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, and for the female dance movement, so Mbah Mitro, as in the Wayang Wong, more male characters, only 1 or 2 female characters, and that's why Mbah Mitro gets more attentions to the male characters, and that's why he transmitted only the male movements. So even for the female members in the dance community, we do all the male characters. Okay, so I have 3 laptops in here in the studio, yeah. So okay. Do I need to stop sharing this? sharing. Okay. Right.
All right, so we're still trying to play the video. Yeah, so it is very interesting when the Wayang Wong movements. Hello? Yeah, Wayang Wong movements are adapted into the dance movement, yeah? And yeah, maybe from Bu Dewi's experience, like, do you, or did you experience, like, what is called spiritual things when you dance this solawatan empra during the performance, maybe?
Okay.
Oh yeah, okay.
All right.
Yeah. All right. So
wait, I'm so sorry about this. Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. Share screen. Okay. Great. Okay.
Please unmute your microphone, Miss Dewi.
Yeah, I can show you this.
I cannot hear any.
So this one is the dalang, yeah. So this Selawatan Emperor also has one dalang. So how they enter the stage by using their knees, yeah. So they're not standing. They say they call this lumaksono. Like as in Wayang Wong, costumes do communicate the characters, but here everyone is wearing the Javanese traditional outfits. And for the woman, she wears hijab, but she moves just like the other men move. To do the male disciplinary body, so no female disciplinary body. So this one is lentreh. Yeah, for the refined characters like Pandawa. And this one is for the brasa, the strong characters, like a Dursosono, Duripun characters in Wayang Wong. Yeah. And this one is called clapping your hands, the ampra, yeah, for the transitions. This one is the brasak too. Okay. All right, so the dancers, yeah. But Eddy admits that not all dancers are able to demonstrate the character types because they are not character dancers. The dance skills, that is one. They don't have that one. And the other reason is that all dancers demonstrate the same movements. There is no divisions in dance works. Thus, the intensity of embodying the character in the movements are lesser than the classical dances as described above, like in Wayang Wong, yeah, the Javanese style Wayang Wong. As a result, there is no such emphasis on the making of the character alive. Yeah, even they don't even smile. Yeah, it is because the prominence of the religious message through the dance performance that comes forward. So this is Islam. So I'm a Muslim. So I'm doing this for veneration purposes. Yeah, it's ibadah or venerations. Yeah. But however, the contested feuds among members on religious purposes and the Wayang dance performance arise because one of the members saying that this is Islamic, this is Muslims, this is about ibadah, this is about venerations, because we have the sujud, because we have the srokal part that describes the Prophet Muhammad when he was a baby and he was taken by, he was carried by the his grandfather to go around the Kaaba. Yeah, that's the story. But one of the other members mentions that this is not Muslim. This is not Islamic in terms of the ibadah, but it's more in art performance. And these persons, the leader of the dance community, wants this to be more into Wayang Wong. And I also happened to take a look at their book, the Book of Ampra. Yeah, it was written in the Arab Gundul, yeah, and then like this one, like a transliterations, yeah, for the Hong Ilahe Ngawi Gesno Mantu Purnomo Sidam. So they have all these things, and then they have the Arabic scripts around here, and then also the Javanese versions, yeah, to lead their dance presentation, and also the narrations as narrated by the Dalang. Okay, Miss Andy, how long do I have? 1 minute. Oh, 1 minute. Okay, maybe. All right, I can end my presentation and here, and I look forward for the discussions. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
All right, so thank you so much for the generous applause for Miss Dewi's presentations. Yeah, I can see some questions on the chat box of the Zoom meeting, but wait, yeah, but because we still have one more presenter, yeah. This is like the last one for today. We have Dr. Miguel Escobar from National University of Singapore. Hello, Mas Miguel.
Halo, selamat siang Bu Andre.
Sugeng siang.
Sugeng siang.
Yeah. Before starting his presentation, I will read his CV. Dr. Miguel Escobar Varela is a theater researcher, web developer, and translator. In his research, he applies computational computational methods to study Indonesian theater and develops interactive websites to share his results with the wider public. He is assistant professor at the National University of Singapore and academic advisor on digital scholarship to the NUS libraries. He directs the Contemporary Wayang Archives and convenes the Informal Digital Humanities Singapore Group. His book, Theater as Data, Computational Journeys into Theater Research is forthcoming with the University of Michigan Press. A list of his writings and digital projects is available at miguelescobar.com. Okay, so today he will be presenting digital tools for the study of Wayang in the next 25 minutes. Mas Miguel, do you want to proceed your presentation with a rap performance, maybe?
Unfortunately, no. I think I will rather speak about the work of the artists that I study than try that embarrass myself by trying to perform. But thank you for the invitation. And well, I want to begin by saying that I think this is a fantastic event. So thank you very much, Bu Andre, Bu Endang, and everybody else at the Sekolah Vokasi who's doing this. When I was looking at the video that you showed earlier today, I of course have this strong feeling of nostalgia from the past year when we were all meeting in person and talking about similar things. So I just hope that everyone is healthy and well, and that soon enough we'll be able to meet again in person. So and have these kinds of events again in Java. But in the meantime, I think it's fantastic to be able to meet online. And I have learned a lot from the other speakers today. I have learned a lot about how Wayang is performed in other places, but also one of the most interesting stories for me is how there's this constant transformation of the tradition. That in some ways, these stories and practices cross across regions. So we've seen that in the first two sessions where we see both Wayang Kancil in Australia, but also the strong and unknown tradition of Wayang in Johor from Mayco, and also in Dewi's presentation, how also there is this complex journey across forms from dance to Wayang to different movement traditions. So this is also something that I'm personally fascinated by, seeing how traditions change over time, and also how things spread over different places. So what I want to share briefly with the audience today is a few web projects. As Bu Andre kindly said, I am interested in developing websites. So part of my own work as a theater researcher is also creating these interactive projects where I can share with the wider public why some things about this art form that I love and that has gathered us here today, which is Wayang Kulit in its many multiple manifestations. So I want to begin by sharing my screen. So just give me a moment. Hopefully I have a dual monitor, and I was trying that a moment ago. So let me just make sure that this works.
Wow,
so,
we can see your screen already. Yeah.
Great. So this is just I begin with this image, what we usually think of as a traditional Wayang Kulit performance. So often the images are zoomed in to the dalang and his assistant in this way. You can see the puppet and the shadow that it casts. But even in the most traditional of performances, we have digital media. So this is an image that was taken from the same performance later at night. And often what we see is this simultaneous transmission, where this image, I took it at around 3 a.m. So people had already left, many of them, the performance. But if you had been here earlier in the day, you would see a lot of people sitting in mats, of course, watching the performance. And this is, of course, the exact same location. This is the exact same village where the performance was happening live down the street. So if you were to walk a few hundred meters, you would have seen the image I showed you earlier. And this is just somebody's house, and next to the house, you see this screen, and the sound is amplified, it's digitized. So the point I want to make with this image is that even the most traditional of performances, even things that we can think of as being traditional today, are always mixed with digital media. So people are using digital media to talk about performances, to advertise what they see, to support the work of artists they like, to critique certain kinds of innovations, deviations, to celebrate also other innovations. People are also using these to learn about the form. So many people are receiving training and learning about ways to perform by following videos on YouTube and elsewhere. And it also opens up an opportunity for scholars like myself to use the digital media to communicate our research in a more interactive way. So I'm interested in these two sides of the question. So on one hand, how artists, spectators, and sponsors are using digital media and what we can learn from that. So people create a lot of data as they do this. So sometimes people refer to this as the digital exhaust. So the same way that you have a car that leaves a trail of emissions as it goes through a city, the same way all of our activities online create this digital footprint. And that is something that we can use to learn about how Wayang is changing over time. But also we can use the medium creatively in order to communicate research. So these are the two things that drive me, and the two things that I want to share with you all today. So this is one of a project that we've been doing over the past 5 years, where we are tracking mentions to Wayang Kulit on social media and on different websites in order to understand what people are saying about performances in different places. So this map that you see over here is a hotspot of Wayang Kulit performances as mentioned in social media from 2016 to 2019. And one of the things that is interesting about this map, or that took me by surprise, is how many of the performances we see at this region close to Banyumas, so like Cilacap, Kebumen, Ciamis. So there are a lot more people talking about performances that happen in these places online than about things that happen in the usual suspects. So like in the greater Solo region and the DIY, the special region of Yogyakarta. So these are one thing that I find interesting about this is that you see a lot of interest of Wayang performances that are happening in other places, also close to the greater Jakarta region, Jabodetabek, and of course you would see some in Jogja and Solo, but so many things happening also over here. So I think what this tells me is that there is a lot more attention that spectators are paying in online, in SOSMED, like in social media, to performances in other places beyond the conventional centers of scholarship, the places where people like myself, who are foreigners, who are fascinated by the form, come to study. So maybe in the future, we need to dedicate a bit more attention to these places. Another thing that we've done, so this is an interactive map of the same data. So so far, this is only for 3 years, 2016 up to 2018. And you can see this like hotspot map of performances in Java. So what I like to think of this is that it's like a beating heart of the rhythm of performances throughout Java. So that over time, some places get more performances, some places get less, but there are certain places that are really like the center of this living system, where you can see that, you know, around like Jogja, Solo, and here, like the Banyumasan area, there are lots of performances. So basically, the deeper the shade of blue, the more performances there are. The lighter the blue, the less performances in that area. So there's this change over time that you can see here. So these are these 3 lines for 3 years. And you can see that the pattern over months is very regular. And this shouldn't surprise anybody who has a familiarity with the form in Indonesia, in Java. We don't track things happening outside of Java, but you can see that, of course, at some point during the Ramadan, that falls in different times of the year, but around May for 2018, and then like around June, you see these dip in performances because there are less performances, of course, during the fasting month. You are only allowed to do certain kinds of performances. People don't really do weddings or other kinds of celebrations. And then we have these peaks. So for example, for August, of course, for 17 for the anniversary of the Indonesian independence, you get a lot of performances. And then like for kind of like a Malam Satu Suro for the beginning of the Islamic calendar, you have a lot of performances, mostly kind of the bersih desa, like kind of like the ritual cleansing of the villages. And that happens over here. I mean, of course, the calendar moves from year to year, so it doesn't fall exactly at the same point every year. One thing I want to do now is we've also been collecting data for 2019, 2020. Of course, when we began this project, we didn't know that the pandemic was going to start. So if you look at this year, you would see that since April to June, there were almost no performances that were happening with audience members, but a lot of people going to YouTube and doing a lot of experiments online. So, for example, one of the great masters of the form in Yogyakarta, who sadly passed away unexpectedly very recently, Suwargi Ki Seno Nugroho, who was innovating with making Wayang Tlimen, these very short performances online for YouTube. So we want to compare what we saw before the pandemic to what we're seeing now. But anyways, I don't want to just bore you with graphs all day. Actually, that's not true. I would love to bore you with graphs all day. I love to think also in terms of data, but that's not what I'm going to be doing today. The point of that is just to show you that we can learn a lot from what people are saying on social media and what people are saying about specific performances in specific places. So another thing that I'm interested in doing is looking at how the work of specific artists and how they are adapting the tradition for their own purposes. So this is an image from Perseteruan Getah Bening, a work by Ki Eko Nugroho. Well, actually, not like Mas Eko Nugroho. He's not exactly a dalang. He's an artist, but he works with Ki Catur Peniek Kunchoro, a very well-known dalang, well-known to the audience here. We saw in the video earlier today some images from Wayang Hip Hop. So he's the dalang that works with Mas Eko Nugroho, a very well-known visual artist. And this is an example of a reinterpretation of Wayang called, so this specific performance is Perseteruan Getah Bening, but it's part of Wayang Bocor. So like Bocor, of course, means like leak. So it's like a Wayang that is leaking around the edges, that it doesn't have, it's not constrained by particular formal limitations, but it can integrate things from other art forms. So in this case, he's interested in combining aspects from the tradition, conventions from Wayang Kulit Purwo, with images that are these surreal shapes. As you can see here, the head of this puppet is just this bunch of clouds, or in this case, this abstract square. So this is part of what artists like himself are doing, that are bringing in their own creativity into the form. And there are lots and lots of people who are doing these kinds of innovations. So one of the, this is like the other example. So this is from Wayang Hip Hop, Ki Catur Peniek Kunchoro, where you see that, the puppets, these are modern versions of the Puno Kawan. So you can recognize Petruk, that we also saw coincidentally in Mayco's presentation. The dalang in Johor had also a traditional version of Petruk. This one here has been reimagined as Patrick, where he is using this more urban outfit in this hip hop version, and you have a puppet that represents a laptop. So, these are two different approaches, the ones that I showed you before, where Eko Nugroho just used these images from his own creation that look a little bit like Wayang in the way that they are made, but don't have any specific continuity with the visual form of traditional Wayang. Whereas here, these are also new creations, but you can really see that there is an attempt to reimagine what these puppets would look like for a modern generation. So there are different ways in which we want people to explore these connections. So one of them is through the Contemporary Wayang Archive. And let me show you here. So this is, coincidentally also from Ki Catur Pranyakunchoro, but this is called Wayang Republic. So let me play a segment for you, and hopefully this works.
Lambo cara ujian negara yang masuk kan ingin burung itu kawan soal lagunya lagi simpen nggak terus dong kan bening scrolling orang kan belut dua terkena paling internet.
So these, as you can appreciate from these short excerpt here,
Halo, Igusti Pak. Okay.
Yeah. So there's this is just an excerpt that I showed you. I hope it played clearly. Otherwise, you can just access the archive. This is publicly available at CWA-web, so cwaweb.org. There's ada versi dalam bahasa Indonesia juga. Jadi kalau ada yang mau mengunjungi situs ini, semuanya diterjemahkan ke dalam bahasa Indonesia juga. So, anyways, the point here is that we have these 24 performances so far. We are working on increasing the collection. We are. I'll tell you more about some of the projects that are on the horizon. Here, what you can see is that we have these notes on how each of these performances adapts the tradition and invents new things with references to politics, to history. This performance, of course, is about the role that the city of Yogyakarta played in the struggle for independence. So it's called Wayang Republik, or Wayang of the Republic, that talks about, as you can see here, I mean, you saw there an image of Sukarno, and you would see many other familiar historical figures who played important roles in the struggle for independence, and this performance investigates the role of the city of Jogja, the Sultanate of Yogyakarta, in the struggle for independence. And there are many other versions that you can see here. They all have notes and data, so you can go here to the recordings of the Rokhman, so you can see all these 24 performances that they all combine the tradition with elements outside the tradition in new and innovative ways. We are working on a new set of collections that is called the Dalang Superstar, and we are very proud to be working with Dr. Kitty Emerson, who, as the audience here knows, is the most famous Wayang translator in Java, and we are working with her to create a new set of performances by 6 superstar Dalangs from Jogja and Solo, and we are going to hopefully within 2 years launch that as an addition to these websites. So here you see these shorter performances, and that one will be all-night performances. So let me. So this is one example of a project. I also have this project here, which was my PhD dissertation a few years ago. It's an online only discussion of how certain artists are adapting the tradition. So you can read it as a book. Here you have the chapters, from end to finish. It's as long as a normal dissertation. You can go to, the introduction. But what it also has is that here I've made a diagram for each of the performances that I discussed. So these are all the performances in the Contemporary Wayang Archive. And then, for example, we have Wayang Kancil as well. So this is a version of Wayang Kancil that was recorded at the Balai Budaya Minomartani in 2012, and of course with the late Ki Lejar Subroto that we saw in an earlier presentation today. So here, I mean, this is these diagrams. I'm not going to explain in a lot of detail, but this is my interpretation based on conversations with artists and sponsors of how each of these performances adapt aspects of the tradition. So basically, the more expanded this figure is, the farthest apart the image is from the performance is from the tradition, the closer to the center, the closer it is to what we understand as Wayang Purwo. People might disagree with my own interpretation. These diagrams are not meant to be definitive. They are only my perspective based on these conversations and fieldwork over several years. But you can click here and read a longer essay. So when you click, for example, on puppets, a longer essay is loaded where you can see more about the puppets with images and video excerpts that explains this trajectory from tradition to new contemporary adaptations for each of these performances, but also across these 5 dimensions of the music, the language, the puppets, the space, and the story. So let me go back to my presentation. So I've got here, this is the Wayang archive. We've got also these multimedia essays. So here you see the chart that I made for each one of those performances, that you can see them interactively in the website. There's also this project that we've been working on called the Digital Wayang Encyclopedia. And here, this is a network. So you can think of this as a bit of like a social network of like a Facebook, if you like, of the puppets. So each of the most common Wayang characters is represented as a circle. And then the lines between the characters means that they tend to be in the same scene together. So as you know, in Wayang Kulit, the scenes are you have the adegan, which would be like a scene where certain characters are together on the screen. So if 2 characters are connected, there will be a line between them, and then you can get to see this. So the color, those that you see in red or like a pink, are the ones that are also found in the Indian version of the stories, whereas the green ones are only found in the Javanese version. And as you can appreciate from here, about half of them are only found in Java. So even though the stories are maybe originally from South Asia, over 1,000 years, the stories have been adapted and made Javanese. So for me, one of the fascinating stories about culture, as we saw in previous presentations today, is that culture moves across boundaries, that people find fascination in stories, in performances from other places, and then adapt them. So the same way that, it would be hard to say that the stories are, they come from India, but they have been made into a Javanese version. You can see that here. So you can click on any of the characters, and then you can find more information about each of them. And then you can find here for example, the silsila. Yeah. Sorry, my daughter is cheering in the background. So here you can see these different. So this is like the silsila, kind of like for each of the puppets. You can also see the lakon, or the story where they're found. So you can click on these. And you can see like a blow-by-blow description of the story for each of the patet and each of the adegan, and then it's linked again to each of the puppets. So we're trying to make these digital encyclopedia in English because there are many such resources in Indonesian already, and this is aimed mostly at international students and researchers who want to know more about this. We've done another project, so this is let me just show this to you quickly.
Yeah,
so
this you have 4 minutes more. Mas Miguel?
4 minutes, yes. Okay,
yeah.
So let me. I think I should be able to share this in 4 minutes or less. So this is based on a project by Professor Bernard Arps, who, as the audience here knows, also like an international eminence in the study of Wayang and Javanese language and culture more generally. He's a professor at Leiden University in the Netherlands, and he published this monumental book in 2016 called Tall Tree Nest of the Wind, which is a detailed study of Dewa Ricci as performed by Kianam Suroto in 1987. So this was based on a performance that happened in Amsterdam in 1987, and then he Professor Arps published this very detailed translation with notes, with philological and historical notes. So then after he published that, what we did was we found the original video, and working together with Professor Arps, we created this online version of his book. So if you go here, this is freely available. The white section of the screen is exactly as the book, so it's meant to be an exact copy, a facsimile of the book. But here it's synchronized to the video. So if you click here, you can basically use the mouse to jump around any of the, so it's been divided into individual phrases. So it's all synchronized to the video. You can see the English version. You can see the, oh yeah, I had put my timer and it's warning me also that my time is coming to an end. So here you see the version, the English version, the Japanese original, but also you can click here on the annotations and you can find these extremely comprehensive annotations for this entire 8-hour performance. So here we have the full performance of Dewa Ricci as performed by Kianam Suroto as analyzed by Ben Arps. So here, so this is another project that we've done. Let me just go quickly well, we did another project. This was for museums. We performed it. We presented this once at Tembi, Rumah Budaya. So we made an interactive screen where we had sensors. So basically the same kind of sensors that you have on your phone to detect like rotation and knocking. And the idea here is that the audience would come and they would become a dalang. So here we see like a young dalang, a dalang cilik, who is sitting in front of the screen. And then as people sit in front of the screen, there's an interface that teaches them some basic conventions. So for example, what the movement of the cajon, the rotation of the cajon means, what the knocking of the chempolo, the togan means for cueing the musical orchestra, and the interaction between the puppets and the bug here, or the banana trunk. So there's a video, you can watch that on YouTube if you're interested. And the idea here is that people can learn a little bit about the conventions and become a bit like the Langs themselves. The final project I want to talk about is the collaboration with Professor Matthew Cohen at the University of Connecticut and the Yale Art Gallery. So there is a big project where also Swargi Bahlejar and Kinanan Kanchil were involved. So this is based on an extremely large collection of Wayang Kulit puppets collected by Pa Walter Angst. So Pa Walter, as some of you knew, was an avid collector of Wayang puppets. So he spent like several decades collecting around 23,600 puppets that are in these boxes currently now at the Yale Art Gallery in Connecticut. And so what we've been doing with them is working with, so the images were taken and now we are transcribing, analyzing the images. We're doing this digital portal where the objective is to combine images of the puppets to the Wayang Kulit encyclopedia. And one thing that is exciting here is that instead of having just one image for, say, like, Gatot Koco or Warkutoro, you could have maybe, 700 different renditions of Warkutoro from different parts of Java, different moments in time. And here, this is just to show you an example of how this will work. Here we only have like a few images so far. But the idea is that as you load them into this website, you can play around with them. You can, for example, decrease the transparency, so you can overlay them. You can also find more information about them and go to the Wayang encyclopedia. So the idea is that you will be able to load any of the 23,618 images into this screen. So with that, I want to conclude. There are other projects, but through this overview, I want to show you how I'm excited about these two areas. One is how we can learn more about Wayang by using data that spectators produce, by how people are using the online media to talk about Wayang, but also how we as scholars can make use of these interactive media to communicate with a wider public the nuances and histories of Wayang Kulit. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you very much for your presentation, Mas Miguel. It's very interesting and yeah, attractive, yeah, how to apply the digital technology to study wayang more detail and also in understandable way. All right, so we proceed to the Q&A session. We have some questions, okay, from Bapak Inyoman Sedana again. So thanks, Dr. Miguel. What makes one place like Kebumen has more frequent wayang performances than other areas? Thank you very much. Could you please answer the question?
Yeah, terima kasih Pak Inyoman Sedana. I'm very happy to see you here in this, to meet in this digital space. And well, yeah, terima kasih Pak. So, thank you for your question. And the answer is I actually don't know. I think we have seen very little research on this area. And maybe in the past also some people have dismissed the traditions of these other places as being perhaps more rural and less closer to the courts. So there's a lot more research in other parts of Java. So I myself know very little about wayang as it's practiced in that region, but I'm very curious by looking at this data. And as soon as I can travel to Indonesia again, when the pandemic is over, that's one of the places that I want to visit. I want to learn more about the specific histories. And what I asked some people online is that they say it's extremely active. There are performances all the time, but often they are perhaps more geared towards entertainment than some of the more philosophically inclined performances that we see in other places. So maybe that's one reason why we haven't studied it so much. So to answer your question, that's also one thing I want to know, and I don't have an answer at the moment, but I hope to learn more in the years and months to come. Thank you again.
Yeah, I think as a researcher, you will be able to contribute a lot of information for us. Because I think the socio-cultural context probably makes significant influence why the wayang is performed or not, for example, like that. So in the future, if you have a chance to do like that, to do your research in Java, for example, right in Bali, if you happen to come to Bali to see us in our campus, for example, I would love to share some ideas. But I think this is because important for us to know how to make the wayang performance more sportive than the other, for example. So I think this is our not only your job, but also ours actually. So thank you, Miguel, and looking forward to seeing you sometime in Bali or in Singapore.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Bapak Inyoman Sedana. Yeah, okay, because of limited time, yeah, I think the time for us is already running out. So could you please, all the participants, give applause or maybe reactions to all the speakers for today. So thank you very much once again to Dr. Irene, Ritchie, and then also Dr. Mayco, Santaella, and then Dr. Dewi, Cahya, Ambarwati, and also Pak Miguel, Dr. Miguel Escobar for presenting today. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I know that there are still a lot of questions, but because of the time, I have to close all the panel presentations for today. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much again for your presentations. It's very informative and also improve our knowledge about the wayang world, yeah, and hopefully it's also beneficial for all, not only for our Indonesian students but also for international public. Thank you very much. I'm so sorry if I made mistakes, and then also there are some inconvenience occurred during the presentation. And then I would like to return the floor to MC Mbak Dea. So the floor is yours. Thank you very much once again, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Andre. Thank you very much, Mrs. Irene, Ritchie, and Professor Michael. Thank you very much, Dr. Dewi Cahya Ambarwati and Dr. Miguel Escobar for the great presentation and also for the information and knowledge which have been given for us. And thank you for the moderator, Ms. Andri Handayani, for leading the Q&A session. To end this and close this seminar, the second international on Wayang, translating, transforming Wayang, changes and developments, we are pleased to have Dr. Dewi Cahya Ambarwati as the chair of the seminar 2019-2020 to deliver the closing speech. Ms. Dewi Cahya Ambarwati, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mbak Dea. Thank you so much. On behalf of the committee of this, the second international seminar performance on Wayang, translating, transforming Wayang, changes and development, I need to express my gratitude and appreciation to all guest speakers here. I'm really moved. It was beyond my expectations. I'm really touched here in this during hard times during this global pandemic. We have the opportunities, we have the chances to meet virtually here, talking about Wayang, learning something, and sharing and exchanging ideas. I'm so happy to see this. And I could feel the strong feelings of the excitement of those who have been attending this seminar. And we still have one more agenda, which is the Wayang. It's going to be very significant for our seminar performance. And from the seminar day one, Dr. Wiryanta from the Ministry of Communication and Informatics, I really appreciate that you came to UGM, along the way from Jakarta. Thank you so much. And Bapak Widodo Hastario from the Monument Pairs, he's been giving a constant support to this seminar, to this Wayang performance since last year. And then Pak Dekan, our Dean, and then Bu Silpi, the Vice Dean, and then Bu Endang, the head of the department, and then our English study programs, Ibu Erlin and Ibu Johanna, and all guest speakers, Ibu Hwang, Pak Eddy, Pak Arif, and then Bu Ronit, and then ada Bu Irene, Mas Miguel, Mas Mayco, enak nyaman, more convenient to say Mas than Pak. Thank you. And all the students, my students from MICE Management, the promotion of Indonesian culture students, it wouldn't be possible without you, without everybody. And thanks so much to all audiences who attended the seminar, and hopefully see you again this evening via YouTube, because we're not allowed to see the Wayang physically. And Balai Budaya Minomartani, our partner since 2018, because since that time we had a memorandum of understanding, but our connections to this very special partner, Balai Budaya Minomartani, has existed since long time ago, longer than 2018, and it was so important for our relationships. And hopefully next year we're going to see you, everyone, again in the seminar. And once again, thank you so much, everyone in the studio, moderators, Miss Dewi and then Miss Andri, and the media teams. Thank you so much. And then the staff from Office of International Affairs, of Vocational College for helping us out, yeah, for this administrative documents, yeah, and see you again this evening. So officially, I close this seminar. Thank you so much. Thank you.
For a wonderful speech. And for the next agenda, we will have the photo or documentation session. To all participants, please turn on the camera and find the most comfortable place because in the count of 3, the photo will be taken 2 times since we will have 2 slides here. Okay, in the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Once again, 1, 2, 3. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of today's seminar. We would like to express our sincere appreciation and convey our gratitude for your participation from the very first agenda until the end of today's webinar. And we would like to express our sincere gratitude to these distinguished speakers, Mrs. Irene Ritchie, Professor Mayco Santaella, Dr. Dewi Cahya Ambarwati, and Dr. Miguel Escobar. Thank you very much for such an interesting and wonderful talks that you've been giving for us. And I would like to inform you that today we will have the Wayang Kulit performance and also the closing ceremony of Mawayang on Saturday, 21st November 2020 in Minomartani Arts and Cultural Center with stories Kancil the Hero in English by Mr. Anggara Sriwisnu and Wayang Purwa in Javanese, The Return of Goddess of Sri by Dr. Eddy Pursubaryanto at 7:30 p.m. until 10:30 p.m. And it will be broadcast live on the Balai Budaya Minomartani YouTube channel, and we invite you all to watch it. I am Diana Dasaragi, representing all the committees on duty. Thank you very much for all the distinguished guests, speakers, and also thank you for all of the Zoom and YouTube participants. As your master of ceremony, from the deepest of my heart, I do apologize if I make some mistakes in presenting this webinar. And thank you very much for your attention. And I hope you are always doing great and stay healthy. Assalamualaikum, Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan, and Salam Sejahtera. See you on the Wayang Kulit performance, and goodbye.